Give it about 10 seconds and it should be good.
I don't really need it that bad.
All right,
Is there one available? Okay. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yep, we should be good.
all right. I'd like to call the meeting
Okay,
to
that's
order at 6:32
Thank you.
PM.
Gosh, I didn't even pay attention to that.
Catherine, you want to do the pledge?
Sure, let's all stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then Tasia, would you like to do roll call?
Yep, Bruce Blargen.
Here.
Katie Thermos.
Here.
Bob Gunther.
Here.
Patty Jo Forsberg. Here. Catherine Cranston.
Here.
Lori Blargen.
Here.
Roxanne Kendall.
Here.
The District Commission, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Our core values are listed. Protocol reminders are listed as well. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to cover a few different areas here, and basically with the exception of the construction update, they're all kind of interrelated, and they all have to deal with basically how we're going to proceed through the rest of the summer with i.e. summer school and school startup in the fall. And the first piece I'd like to refer to, we're going to look at several surveys or talk about some surveys. The first one is the one I sent out later this afternoon, or we attached, and it had to do with an all-district survey that was sent out to all the households. And it basically, what we're searching for is how the community feels about sending their kids back to school. Because if you remember last meeting, we talked about the whole distance learning piece, virtual academy, preparing for possibly running 2 platforms for kids, percentage of kids that aren't being sent back, what have you. So we needed some insight into really what those numbers look like before we could even sit down and start planning for next fall. Interesting piece, I think Catherine, you mentioned it about opening it up to people that would like to be on the committee. We only had 400 people that said they'd like to be on the committee.
Oh, well, what a great problem to have.
I know.
You know, our community cares.
It is.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was really good. We had, oh, you have it up here,
Mhm.
so, I found some of these things more meaningful to me because looking at, and again, Trent's gonna talk about the survey he did with the athletes. Shannon's gonna talk about the senior parents survey. And to me, they all say the same thing. They're all trending the same way that, people wanna get back to normal as soon as possible. But I think what we read into all this is that we have to do it cautiously. And we, our meeting with county health today, we have these meetings once or twice a week, and the same thing keeps coming through, that you're the decision makers on how this is going to go, but use your best judgment, take into account what's happening out there and what some of the guidelines are, because they are, the new guidance that's coming out, we're privy to a little bit in June 22nd is, they're gonna lift from the 10-person gathering to a 50-person, so the next level. They're gonna rate each county by risk level. And I can't remember what the categories are, but there's 4 or 5 different categories. We would be in the bottom 2 where it would be minimal risk, and the last one is no risk, which would be business as usual. So they did say that we'll probably be in the minimal risk one. And that'll have a set of criteria with it, again, guidelines. There's no law, there's no, you're gonna get arrested if you do this. It's just, we have to use our best judgment on how to proceed. And the categories I put down here, school startup, which I'm gonna include summer school in that, commencement, and the whole distance learning thing. We really have to work out a lot of details on how that's going to go, but tonight, for what we wanted to look at here is how comfortable you are and what kind of direction you can say, hey, proceed to the next step, which would be diving into the details on how we're gonna make each one of these things work. And then we'll put this committee together. Now we go to 50, we can have, an in-house group come together for this and work on that. But we'll just go through these slides very quickly, and hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at some of the questions and that and the percentages. And again, the people were just asked, there were 701 responses, and there was, people were just asked, where are your kids? And those were the percentages of, they have multiple kids in multiple buildings and that. Let's go to the next one here. So, knowing what you know about the current state of the pandemic and our health partners, if our health partners believe it is safe to allow in-person instruction, having your children return to school this fall. You take a look at, 67 in the yes and 27 in the I am likely, pretty much tells the story that people are ready to, within reason, come back to our schools. And that's where we were worried about if it said 20% weren't going to, how are we gonna proceed that? As far as, then we'd have to beef up, our distance learning, our virtual learning, what have you, but only, I don't know, can you click on that green, what was it? I think we only had 6 respondents in the green.
Because I took a picture of it.
Oh, okay, if you click on your computer on the green, it should pop up just a number of respondents that said, no, they're not coming, it doesn't? Okay, I'm sorry. What's that?
It won't on
Either
this
way,
document.
it won't, okay.
94.
But it was, I think it was 6 people out of all the respondents said that they went. So very high percentage of saying, you know what, let's try and get business as usual. Let's go to the next one.
Well, does that include the gold or the yellow color, Mark?
Let's see, back up.
Because they said they're unlikely.
The gold is, I am unlikely to send my student for in-person instruction.
So those two together would be about 6%.
Oh, the two of them together, I got you.
Right, I'm sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, and when we go through school perception surveys and things like that, they always group the high and the next group together. That would kind of gives you the for sures and the ones that are leaning that way.
Yeah.
So that's just what I did there, so, okay. Next one is, given the context of the current pandemic, which school model would best meet the needs of your children and your family for 2021? Well, you can see overwhelmingly, 100 or 100% is the green, so a very high number there, and then 17% with a possible class size reduction, which if we're thinking that, that causes, that engages a couple different schools of thought. Do you try and find more people to come in, or do you break down the structure of your day so there's less kids in the class? So
Our class sizes are pretty reasonable
they
to
are.
begin with.
Yeah,
I mean,
they are.
at the elementary anyway, so,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have class sizes of 36 kids like I do, I'm 42 kids in a math class, so I don't think that's, there's some elementary rooms that have 20 kids in them.
And I guess knowing what I know and sitting in all these meetings versus, I don't know, you don't know how engaged the parents are as far as, the information they're accessing as far as making the choices here. I think there's I have a real high comfort level as far as, what I'm seeing as the results here and what I'm reading into this. As far as, again, careful, cautious, measurable return. And I think you'll see that through some of the thoughts that we have already. Assuming that your student's school may be required by DHS to temporarily close for an extended period of time, a period because of confirmed COVID cases, if given a choice, how would you like to proceed? And almost 50% is some type of engagement through a combination of in-person and distance instruction. And again, the other 2 responses were split, but these are things that now we can work on those as far as what are our protocols if we do have an issue. And I would have to say that, Emily is working very hard on this startup piece, and she's worked very hard with Trent, and as far as keeping us up to speed with what, where all the information is coming from and what's solid there. And then the last one, I would feel safer for my child to attend school if. And you can see, we have masks there, it's all over, all over the map here on some of these different pieces here. And again, guidance from, DHS and county health will build into kind of this graph as far as how we're gonna proceed. What precautions are we gonna do? And we don't know that yet, but again, after hearing this data that we have, I really want to engage in a conversation of, what, we see the trends here, let's take it to the next step, which would be start drilling down and making some of these, hard concrete plans, for some of these pieces, like we got commencement coming up July 16th. So, all these things have to be worked on, right now. And these things are all over the map in all the other districts. I would say, the thinking that we're doing, we're a little bit ahead, but there are other districts are, have done some other pieces that are very similar. That's the next one.
Yep, it's
Oh, that was the last one there. Thoughts or comments about just this parent survey? What are you feeling about this?
Well, it's pretty consistent in what I'm hearing from just the general population is, we get to that point with some advancements and testing and whatever, that they're a little bit more comfortable. So I sense some comfort out of this.
So,
And I think the 700 responses is a fairly high number of our families.
Michelle said that she's roughly about 960 families.
So we have
That's a
had,
good survey response.
Well, like we
Yeah.
said, it's 2/3 of the kids in the school, 1,000 people on that first page out of the 1,500 we have.
okay, so I guess the question is, if you feel comfortable in this data, that gives us a direction as far as how we can start proceeding with what, what we need to do. The one that directly ties into this that I'm gonna jump a little bit here on that virtual and distant learning update. That was really for a discussion piece after we talked about it, because I kind of sprung that on you last meeting and you probably had some time to think about that. Do you have any thoughts on that? We were looking at trying to create or develop a position of somebody that could help parents and staff, through this whole virtual or distance learning piece. That was the discussion we had at the work session. Has anybody had any additional thoughts to that? Is that something that, if you notice here, there's a very fine sliver of people that said, no, I'm not gonna send my kids back. But, again, I was expecting anywhere from that to maybe 20% that we'd have to prepare for, which that would cause some real, we'd have to do some really hard work. But I still think that's not something we just let go because the number was low, because I do think that we're gonna have ups and downs in this thing, and we may have to be ready to jump back in. So, do we wanna still look at developing support for our staff for online learning? The staff survey shows some of the things that they need, and we're already doing some of that through CISA and some professional development. But do you see a larger need of engaging, maybe an outside resource to help us with that?
I don't know if this survey shows it, because you don't know what age the kids are, and when you guys were talking about it, you were talking about high school and maybe middle school. I mean, if they're talking about their kindergartners, it's not really, you can't take the results from the survey to reflect the need of that at all, I don't feel. It just,
Well, if we
6
engage this
people,
person, this would be a K-12, this would be a systemic piece here, because there's, as Shannon spoke last week, she's going to fill in with a staff person there for the high school component of it. And then as we look down the road, I guess my fear is I don't want people running to other districts for virtual because we're not prepared or ready for it.
yeah.
I mean, we can have more conversations, this is not a, hey, let's do it right now.
No, I was just saying this survey doesn't show, it doesn't give any guidance one way or the other to that component. I don't feel that it tells us that we need it or don't need it. Not that it isn't, I'm just saying that this I don't think we can use it as a tool for it.
I mean, if you're looking at 5% of our people, that's 75, almost 100 people that would be distance learning. I mean, that's more than just, that's,
Well, it's
An
3
entire grade,
sections,
you know.
it's 3 sections.
I would take that, and then if there is somebody that needs to go through their 15-day rest period, and there's
Right,
another
they're gonna
5%
have
of
to-
those,
yeah, you're gonna be in and out, I think.
I
you're
do
gonna
see
have
the
people-
value in getting some additional information, so I would say bring us some more information on what that would look like.
You know, the
So
other
we're
side,
prepared for it.
the student side is one piece, but then what if we have staff missing? You know, how do we engage that class? You know, because that's very likely to happen also, if we have, you know, a teacher or two out. You know, how do we bring that class along, keep them moving? Because you know how it is with subs, you know, it's tough to get subs that come in. And you know, when you look at the age of our subs, you know, are they gonna be, you know, this is gonna be a whole interesting year because, you know, a lot of retired people are coming into sub for us, and are they gonna wanna possibly expose themselves to, you know, what may be out there? We don't know.
Yeah, I like the position, I just, in the world of statistical analysis, you can't take this
Yeah.
statistics and put it to that, because that's not what it's for, so.
And are you talking about hiring a new position? Or don't we have staff currently who can address some of these needs?
That's what we're gonna look at. Do we have somebody internally that we can free up to do some of this? Or is it something that we have to have outside expertise for that? We just don't know that yet.
We always have that full-time sub.
No,
What's
we
that?
don't.
But we did,
Yeah,
but we renew it every year, so if we didn't renew that position, would we be able to bring somebody in, a teacher who would, it'd probably be a little bit more expensive, obviously, bringing somebody else in.
It might
a
be nice
first-year
to have.
Teacher, but,
It would be a
position.
teacher probably.
yeah,
yeah.
I think,
it would be like huge.
I think that it should not be off the table, absolutely, but I don't think we should automatically look outside. I think we have a lot of really talented people here that have a lot of good ideas.
We're
I
doing
think,
it now.
yeah, and maybe if at the middle school and high school level, we end up with 50 kids that wanna do hybrid kind of thing, or they wanna do distance learning, I think we need to meet their needs.
Well, at the high school, we're gonna have the virtual academy
Right, but what
available.
if somebody doesn't wanna, they don't wanna do full-time? You know, maybe we could look at a hybrid model for kids that wanna be sometimes in
Right.
school, sometimes out of school. I think this is the time to be thinking outside the box.
Well, if you're going into that, you're going to almost a project learning type.
The only thing I was hoping to get, you know, from here, actually, from this survey here, you know, just like Pat Joe was saying, I'm actually a little bit more relieved right now. Anxiety levels a little down. We didn't have 20% of our people saying, no, I'm not coming back. So again, it's like, okay, let's just keep talking about this, and we'll just keep doing some more work and developing this, if that's okay. But personally, I see there's gonna be, if we don't get a plan in place, we're gonna be losing kids, because the ones that want it, they're gonna go, and they can go that quick, and bleed us a little bit. So, again, if there's absolutely no, let's not even think about it, sentiment, great, we'll just keep working on it and bring you back some more
I'd
information.
like to add in, though, that I would like to see information if we did bring in somebody outside, and my thought process in that is, you know, if the person that we have here winds up being out, you know, I mean, sometimes there are advantages to bringing in an agency who has multiple people who does this, so.
If there is such a thing.
I don't know if it's an agency.
Well, most of the.
Well, and then you don't have to.
There are companies like that offer, and they'll bring they'll have their own staff. So you
Yeah.
join, it
Just
would be
saying,
just
add
like,
in.
it would be just like sending our kids to St. Croix Central or whatever, but you'd go to a vendor for that, so. But we'll keep turning this, you know, keep working on that one. You know, along with the startup, you know, that brings up the topic of starting up summer school again. Now, several of the districts in the middle border, some are doing nothing, they've just, like Osceola said, no. we're not doing any summer school, but then, Hudson's starting up July 7th, they're doing some activities. Baldwin is starting up, and we have proposed all along that, you know, because of the construction and now because of the virus, we were gonna look for a couple sessions in late July and August. You know, the only hangup we have right now, and rightfully so, you know, time is short, and anything we've done in the past with the procedure we've used or protocols with the catalog and how we progress is kind of out the window because we don't have that kind of timeline to do that. So I guess on the spectrum, we're either here doing nothing or very little, or trying to do as much as possible as we can with the resources we have, because we only have about 30 staff that have said in some shape or form they would be willing to participate in summer school in late July and August. And again, it would be a combination of, can we get registration done? You know, we've got about 7 weeks before that last week of July, and we don't have to do the last week of July, but again, so that would give us 7 or 8 weeks to develop this. I'm kind of wondering what your feelings are. Again, half the conference is doing nothing, and some are doing little bits here, there, and what have you. My thought all along was, as soon as we get these kids back to normal and some face-to-face, the better, but that's me. I wanted to kind of know how you feel, and that'll tell us how hard we have to go at this to get some programming for August.
Thoughts?
Does it all have to be in person? Or can it, some of it be?
Oh, it can be
virtually
virtual.
held out offsite, and done at the evening when parents are home? things
I
like that?
have not heard any interest in that.
Okay.
Because we did offer 2 weeks of distance summer school, and only 30% of the kids took part in that. And even that was hard to keep them interested.
Sure.
That's what I'm sensing too from survey and what have you, is that people are here with virtual until we've got to master that a little bit better. I mean, we did what we could do, but again, my gut's telling me as much face-to-face as we could offer, you know, again, within reason and within certain protocols.
Well, I think if we have 30 staff, it has to be, the offerings then are what those staff can handle, and keep the class sizes small, like the summer school's always pretty small. And I think that's a great 3-week testing ground to see how it goes.
Right.
Now, we actually have a little model to use for when school starts. We'll find out what worked, what didn't work. Yeah, a little pilot.
Okay,
Yeah, do
so,
we wait to get it right, or do we start, I mean, I guess
Let's
if you
start
get
her
it-
out and see.
so can I go back as far as just saying we'll move forward with whatever ammunition we have to make something happen? You know, again, because it's gonna be a combination of who really registers and for what we're going to offer and the staff we have to make do. Because we're kind of at a point where, you know, we really have to move now, knowing that, and again, you know, we wouldn't have this conversation 3 weeks ago because we're at a different point in the virus. Now it seems like, you know, things are really moving forward, and other districts are jumping in, and so it's, again, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as far as moving forward with what we can do.
Would you estimate the 7th then?
Pardon?
Would you estimate starting it on the 7th? Like,
No, the
let's-
last week of July.
No, at the earliest, the last week of July, right?
Okay.
You know, we've kind of held that we
Got
would try the last week of July and August. Again, that's been our hope, and now that we know where we're at right now, we got some flex time in there, and so we'll meet with the Kristens and see just, okay, what can we put together? And I believe it's gonna be a combination of some virtual things for the upper levels that, you know, need remediation, what have you. But I really would like to have some, you know, get some face-to-face going, so, you know, these kids can get engaged again.
Bring back athletics and activities at that time.
So are you
Two.
talking about a total of 4 weeks?
3.
Well, again, you know, the idea was 2 2-week sessions, but, you know, that was what we were ideally trying to do. But again, I wanted to get these surveys done, and get the feeling here as far as, you know, what direction we wanted to go in and,
Well, I'm in favor of offering everything we possibly can. So
Okay.
however many staff members we have who are interested, and however many families who are interested, I'm all for it. I do have a question about high school classes, because in the past, we've had kids take summer school, high school classes for credit to free up time for other opportunities during the school year. Is that still going to happen?
Yep, so we're actually gonna be running 2 virtual sessions, so we're running one right now. And then we just open it back up for students to register for kind of a second session, which would kind of fall in line with this timeline, a little bit later in July and August. So, and we've had, of course, I don't have the numbers in front of me because I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but a really high response rate from kids that have been, you know, and again, this is voluntary, very different than kind of the virtual experience that they were, you know, at the end of the year. So for those exact reasons, some of it is to knock off some credits, to open up their schedule, wide variety of reasons. So I would say at the high school, you know, the next big step for us is really kind of figuring out a plan for students that need some of that remedial work. Because that is not ideal virtually, which is why we've kind of been, so we've been kind of, I would say, tabling that a bit until we got to a place where we could potentially do some face-to-face with remedial, so.
One of the classes I know that had a huge number of kids in the summer was Phi-Ed.
Yeah.
Are you doing a virtual Phi-Ed class right now?
Nope, so we waited to see if we would be able to open up something face-to-face. Phi-Ed, as you can imagine, is not ideal to be run virtually.
Right. No.
So we are hoping now after this conversation, because I know as Mark and I talked about it too, that we wanted to get kind of a feel from you to see what you would support before we started kind of pushing it back out. It may end up being a bit of a hybrid, just in terms of trying to get the required number of hours in because it's accredited class.
Right.
So there may be some face-to-face and some at-home type work, but we purposefully waited so that we could hopefully get something face-to-face, knowing that if we had to do virtual, we could, because we have many students that are relying on that credit for a variety of reasons coming into the school year, so
Thank you.
it's in the works.
Trent is part of this whole startup operation here. You know, our grounds will be open July 1. The only concern we have now is just construction, that we'll have to, you know, so if kids wanna be on the fields and what have you, they can, but we have to control the traffic flow and what have you, put some rules in place for that. But Trent, I'll let you take this part of it here, because the month of July is kind of a unique situation this year.
Yeah, so, as Dr. Bezic shared, we were able to open up our campus grounds July 1st, and it really comes down to, we're not only navigating COVID, the worldwide pandemic, but also construction. So it's coming up with a plan that is gonna ensure the safety of our students and staff who would be on campus, taking into consideration the guidelines that we're seeing from county health, stuff that DPI is rolling out. WIA has not come out with anything officially yet, but we're anticipating that to be sometime in the next week or so of guidelines that schools can follow. So we pushed a survey out to families that have a student entering grades 9 through 12 a few weeks ago, geared towards, hey, if you have a student that would be participating in athletics in the coming year or in workouts, please fill this out to give us information or feedback to let us know where, as parents and families, what your comfort level would be for potentially sending your kids for workouts or contact day practices later on. Knowing that this would likely be a progression, we didn't anticipate we get to July 1st, we open up our facilities and we're running 100 kids through the weight room at a time like we would in a normal year, knowing that this would have to be some sort of progression. So the feedback that we got, we sent out within that survey 2 types of questions. One was more geared towards the size of groups, the comfort level in regards to the size of the groups, putting a question regarding groups being 10 or less, groups being 20 or less, or if there were no restrictions on group sizes. 87% of our respondents said that they would support sending their child for workouts if their groups were 10 or less. 84% said that they would support sending their child if the groups were 20 or less. And then it dipped to 73% with there were no restrictions. 8.3% said they were unsure if they would send their kids at groups of 10 or less. And then 11% said they were unsure if they would send their child for groups of 20 or less. Throughout that, 2.8% said they would not send their kid due to COVID concerns. And 1.4% said they would not send their kid, but not due to COVID, due to other reasons, either vacations or other things that come up during the summer that their kid just wouldn't attend regardless. So taking a look at the feedback that we got from parents, looking at the guidelines that are already being rolled out by the various organizations, what we're looking to do is starting July 1st with this, bring in groups for strength and conditioning classes or sessions in different ways, but limiting the size of each group to 15 or less. We feel like based on the space that we have on campus, so you take into consideration the high school gym, the weight room, and then the track, we could have 3 groups on campus at a time that don't cross paths, don't share facilities, equipment, and they don't exceed 15 kids at a time. Looking to do that more so in the mornings, and then in the afternoons. On a normal year, we would have kids working out in the weight room, and we'd also have kids in the gym at the same time working on skills. But because we're navigating COVID and space is at a premium, we have to take that into consideration. And we're also down a gym with the middle school being under construction right now. It would not be logical to pull that off at the same time. So what we would look to do is still allow our kids to have access to our gym and our campus facilities, but more so in the afternoon and the evening. And that would be a coordinated effort with our coaches to come up with some sort of rotational schedule so we can ensure that our sports that take place on campus have access to that. If we have sports that take place off of campus, that's just a matter of working with those entities to offer our opportunities, just as we would in a normal summer, but following our guidelines. And then our hope would be, if our partners with the state, county are deeming it to be safe, that we would be able to do our contact day practices like we typically would do later in July. But again, there's details that would have to be worked out with that, knowing what their guidelines and recommendations would be, and then be on track to hopefully start athletics and activities on August 3rd when their normal start dates would be.
What I envision with, WIA making recommendations, I think the conferences are gonna be involved with these decisions, and the school boards are gonna be involved with these. And as before I mentioned, there's gonna be risk categories, and if our area of the state, let's say the, Pierce County, St. Croix County, and Polk County are low risk, what sports will be available to go forward, because you can't really have a season if 3 districts say, nope, we're not gonna play, or what have you. So it's gonna there's just a lot of things to work out here, but we're gonna take it one step at a time, and we're just gonna slowly bring these kids back and get them into the groove here in July. One thing I didn't mention, that we talked at the construction meeting today, informed them of what's happening in July, and so we'll work with our, with Market Johnson, that what's the safest way to bring kids onto campus and where they can park and things like that. And they're very good at working. Actually, Market Johnson was one of the top construction firms that are good with working with people on campuses or in buildings while they're occupied. So we'll work out a safe plan for that, so we don't have kids getting run over. Anything else, Trent? Thoughts or comments on that? Again, it's a gradual progression of how we bring things back. Obviously within there's cleaning and cleansing and all these things that have to be taken into consideration. And again, we want to run this all by you, so if there isn't any major objections, tomorrow morning we start drilling down on how we're going to make this the logistics of everything.
Sounds like you put a lot of time and effort and thought into it.
And Emily's been a great partner with just knowing the healthcare guidelines and oversight on that, so she's been extremely helpful throughout this, just getting feedback from our coaches on this is great too.
It's gonna take a lot of people to make this thing work, and just so people feel comfortable coming back and safe. Okay, so the last kind of piece in this puzzle here, and as we're progressing, would be commencement. And Shannon and I have been talking quite a bit about this, and Shannon's in touch with all the principals in the conference, and, you know, I talk to superintendents at least 2 or 3 times a week, and we're all talking about, you know, everyone's doing something a little different, and, however, you know, we had proposed the July 16th commencement, and the idea is to possibly have something outside, and we really have one venue that would work for us outside. We don't want to bring that, you know, a lot of people onto our campus in the football field here, so, you know, we're looking at the River's Edge concert site there where they have the drive-in style thing there with video and what have you, and Prescott, I believe, just had an outdoor graduation, a drive-in style graduation. Osceola's going to do one on the football field. Amory's going to do one in, I think it's either late July or August, in their building, the traditional commencement. So is New Richmond planning on that. So again, how that works, in fact, I think, who's the county health person? What's her name? I can't think of her name.
Oh, there's several of them.
Kelly, yeah, so, you know, that may be pie in the sky for New Richmond having 1,000 people in their gym in August, but again, you wanna share the survey that you took with the
Yeah.
senior parents and,
Oh, yes, you know, so graduation has been, I would say, probably one of my biggest priorities, just in terms of trying to figure out options and stay on top of recommendations and guidelines and DPI, and also trying to stay in line with what other schools around us are doing and their plans. And so we have went from A to Z and back again in terms of kind of what we've been able to do. You know, 2 months ago, you know, I was pretty convinced we were only gonna be able to put something together virtually, which is something we have been desperately trying to avoid. And so I'm thankful that, you know, even as recently as this morning with your recent call, that things are loosening up in our favor in terms of being able to give our kids really the best graduation that we can put together, which has been my goal from the beginning. So last week, kind of without this latest information, you know, we've had a lot of conversations of, you know, feeling good about being able to put together commencement, A, outside, and B, at River's Edge, using the stage, using the screen, and then just having a lot of conversations of, well, then what? And so last week I sent a letter to senior parents, basically outlining at that time, you know, what we believe to be probably the best plan we have in terms of, again, trying to avoid a virtual ceremony, which really was kind of presenting to parents a drive-in style graduation, where students and parents essentially would remain in their vehicles, that he and I would be kind of facilitating commencement up on the stage. Students would be able to come up out of their vehicles kind of one by one to get their diploma in a fairly traditional sense, but the format in general is really restricted. And that was very purposeful, because not knowing really what changes might occur from, you know, last week when I sent the letter to July 16th, which is about a month, you know, not knowing if things will change, is that as restricted as it's going to have to be, then we were kind of okay saying, we may have to live with this format of commencement. Is it super ideal? No, but in my brain, it's better than virtual. So I sent the letter. I also had just a really short 3-question survey for parents of, you know, if with this format, do you feel comfortable with your child attending commencement? Because as Mark was saying earlier with the parent survey that we just talked about, I really had no idea. Would I get, you know, 90% of people saying, nope, we'd really rather prefer virtual, although I knew anecdotally that probably wasn't the case, but just trying to get some information about how comfortable people are feeling about getting together in person. Again, knowing the plan that we laid out was fairly restrictive, but how do you feel about it? The other thing I put in there too was, you know, kind of a senior tradition here is our seniors on their last day of school, which would have been May 8th, as they engage in graduation practice, and then have a large picnic. Obviously that didn't occur, and so we've been having some conversations about, is it possible of maybe putting something like that together? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the restrictions and what that looks like. But I wanted to also throw that out there to parents as an option of, when we get to, and right now the tentative date would be July 15th, I think I put. If we did a senior picnic at Village Park, because we know that we don't want to put kids on buses, is that something you'd feel comfortable with your child attending, kind of yes or no? So with both of those questions, so we have 104 graduates, we had 64 parents fill out the survey. So 100% of the parents said, yep, my child would participate in graduation, and 92% said, yes, I feel comfortable with my child attending a picnic, knowing that the picnic right now is kind of 50-50, depending on if we can make something like that work. So I felt good about that, and then I also left kind of an open-ended question of, is there anything else that you'd like me to know in terms of graduation? So, and those were just, I would say, general comments. The vast majority were very positive, appreciative that the staff and I are trying to put something together that is something other than virtual. And so that was kind of where we landed last week. So this morning, as we were talking after his most recent phone call, once again, and this is a good thing, I feel much more confident about being able to have some further discussion about loosening up some of those restrictions, and potentially being able to have our graduates kind of sit together as they would in a formal, traditional commencement, chairs 6 feet apart. We've kind of come up with what I think are some creative ideas to try to make this kind of as fun as possible, and again, unique and memorable, knowing that we still have some conditions that we need to live under and abide by in terms of keeping people and families safe. So some of the logistics that we're still kind of working out at this point would be, if we moved away from kind of just the drive-in, where basically you're staying in your cars, and we opened it up a little bit more, where families maybe brought their own chairs in, and we still probably have to look at something like restricting the amount of people per graduate. That's something we typically have not done. Our graduations have always been, if you bring 50 people, great. If you bring one, great. But with this type of venue, again, navigating what we're navigating, we'll likely look at some sort of a restriction. I know some schools in our conference are allowing 2 tickets per graduate period. Some are allowing 4, so we'll just have some more conversations, and some of that is just logistically what the drive-in can kind of handle, although I know it's a big, wide open space, but, so that's kind of where it sits, and I'm more excited about it now than I was a week ago, because just the drive-in style, I was never completely in love with myself, but knew, again, that's kind of where I thought we were gonna have to land to be able to do kind of something. So I'm excited about being able to release a second letter at some point, and I've kind of told families that around by July 1st, we'll have some more kind of formal information for you regarding logistics and format and how many people and parking, and so I was kind of waiting until after this, because I also want to get a feel from, obviously, you as the board in terms of, sounds good, or like, whoa, you should just do virtual, which I hope you won't say, but before we really kind of dive into any more details, so.
I think it sounds amazing, and I'm really excited for how invested you are in making this a special experience for our seniors, so thank you very much. I really liked when you brought up having the graduates actually sitting together, but a safe distance apart. And I don't know how logistically you could do it, but if the families can fit a certain amount in their car, and then they commit to, if they have lawn chairs, and they commit to staying at their own vehicle and hopefully not, gathering in any way, I really like that. And then in terms of the picnic, I have a friend who's doing a graduation party for her senior, and she's doing all, individually wrapped sandwiches, little bags of chips, sodas, nothing is buffet style,
Right.
and it is, but you grab a packaged item. So I think that would be doable, and then you can maybe encourage the use of masks in hopes that they do it if they wanna get close together in any way, but I think everything you talked about just sounds fantastic.
Did you see where they're doing the Garth Brooks concert thing out there? So, I don't think they're doing it in cars though. They're gonna be spray painting squares, and so that your family would have a square. And your family, you could bring up to 6 people or
Right.
whatever. Your family is assigned a square that's in there. I don't know.
Yeah, so we talked about that actually this morning, of having Bill Roll come up and chalk off
Yeah,
104, whatever it is, squares, and kind of first come, first serve, and
you could bring your own chairs and you walk in, and, but that eliminates the whole feel of being in your car.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a great idea, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
We want the kids
kinda
sit,
fun,
the kids can bring the kids can bring their lawn chairs, we'll space them out.
Yeah,
So
then
it'd be a
X's,
little-
Bill can do X's
Have a
for
little
where.
thing there. But then the other thing was, you know, you see these yard signs with graduates park, their faces and picture that.
Uh-huh,
Okay, here's your student's picture, this is where you
that's
guys
your
can
spot,
congregate.
how cute
I
is
know,
that?
so. I
That
mean, there's a
actually makes it
bunch of
cute.
different things we're thinking of in that, but again, it's just in the progression of all these things we've been talking about. If you feel comfortable with us moving forward, now we gotta drill into it right away and get it set up.
It's
so.
an outdoor venue, I mean, it's,
Right?
it's perfect, as long as it doesn't rain.
don't say it, I know, don't say it.
People will bring umbrellas, you can still see that screen.
That's true.
Well, we have a backup day. I talked to Steve out there that we have it set for the 16th. The backup is the following Thursday, and then it's rain or shine.
It
wanna stay
sounds
from
like you're being
weekends.
extremely cautious, so I
Wonderful.
have faith in your decisions.
Drill away.
Yeah, and I just wanted to be very, I would say, public in saying that we very intentionally started extremely restrictive. Because, you know, I got a couple comments on the survey that let me know that they weren't super thrilled with the drive-in style. So, I get it, but, so I'm thankful that I think now too, that we'll be able to
Well, you
open it
were
up.
personally responsible for that.
Yes, so.
We're all excited.
Send out a survey, be prepared.
Yeah.
Every time, yep, so, okay.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. One last item that I have is a construction update, very quickly. Things are progressing very well. They've got a little delay in some of the air handling units that were supposed to be shipping in the middle of July that aren't gonna be here till August, but it's nothing that's gonna hold up any major piece of the construction. You know, as you saw coming in here, the elementary parking lot has its first lift on. So again, things are moving rapidly, and if anybody needs any dirt, please let me know. Be more than happy to work with them. Bruce, anything from the meeting today that budget looks good? You know, so we're timelines, nothing?
No, and just with the school, I mean, Mark and Johnson should be happy that we haven't had kids here all summer long, so if we're only having them here for 2 months instead of 4 months like we were planning, they better be going above and beyond to make sure everything's okay. So I don't think there's gonna be an issue with keeping kids out there, cause they should be using less people this whole time as they were planning. They had a whole, what they were gonna do to keep kids going, so
Yeah.
that shouldn't even be an issue.
Yeah. And if you look at the site, you know, most of our work up here, the heavy, you know, operating work is now down by the high school and the middle school. So again, if we contain ourselves with our parking and what have you, I'll work with Mark and Johnson on that, so we're not putting,
Yeah, as long as they know.
and plus we're still, you know, it's only the middle of June. I keep thinking we've been out of school for so long, I kind of feel like it's August already, but, you know, we're still doing good. So, that's all I have, unless you have any.
Shannon, was there anything on the virtual academy that you wanted to talk to
Well,
us about?
just what we talked about when we were talking about school startup and pieces like that, from what I'm taking away is that we're gonna still keep working forward on it and, start checking interest internally and I just wanna keep it on the table because I just believe it's something that somehow we're going to have to, take care of, so we just don't lose kids, so.
Anything you wanted to add?
No.
Still plugging away.
Oh, I-
Yep, no, that's okay.
Sorry, I
Still
thought you were
plugging away,
looking
and
at-
at the next work session, I'll maybe give a little bit more of a formal update,
Thank you.
okay?
Is Dave coming in for financial reports?
Can we get 'em?
Yeah, why don't you?
So positive, it's like, yes. Let's move on.
You're on.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a delay in the
Oh,
YouTube feed, so I just heard that. Financial reports, there's, or maybe you saw I put a little extra information as requested for the different kinds of codes.
yes, I appreciated that. The 49 code with the referendum items.
It's in the referendum items, and it's also in the code description at the start of the budget to action
What was
packet.
called the capital ones?
The 49, we run expenditure for construction, revenue, and then we pay for it in 39, so that does for this one. So other than that, I don't have any comment with the financial reports, but if you have questions, I can certainly answer them.
Did anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
But
The next item is the open forum, and we had 2 people notify us. One of them is going to join us via Google Meet, I believe.
I never get open forums. It's exciting. All right, Corey, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Cool. Do I just go?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. To the Board of Education, my name is Corey Lindenberg, English teacher, PLC, current varsity girls basketball coach, part-time PA announcer, former varsity softball coach, C-Teams boys basketball coach, former student basketball coach, and MC for occasional school gatherings at the school district of Somerset. This is my 10th year in the district, 4th year as a resident of Somerset Township, and I would like to share my thoughts about the draft of the coach advisory letter of appointment. First of all, I don't envy the position of the board or the administration. You are currently engaged in a hopefully once-in-a-lifetime task of navigating the district through a pandemic, and I understand that things will need to be done not only to balance budgets, but to ensure the well-being of district stakeholders. To that end, it makes sense to me that as varsity coach, I should not be fully compensated if a season is cut short or doesn't take place. However, I think the phrasing and phasing of the specific COVID language has some hopefully unintended consequences. Coaching is a year-round occupation, and the language that withholds compensation if the season is canceled outside of 30 days of the start of the season doesn't square with that notion. While I am currently unable to meet with the members of the basketball team, I engaged in team meetings electronically with each player returning to the program, checking in on their well-being and sharing both the vision for next season and development ideas for how to get there. I'm setting up an online method for sharing drills that any Spartan basketball player at any level can engage with in order to feel like they are part of the program without having to leave home. And every day I either review game film from last year or seek out new ideas online concerning game strategy, team building, and best practices in order to make the girls basketball program something that Somerset can be proud of. As it is currently articulated, the coaching advisory letter of appointment doesn't acknowledge that those endeavors are valuable to the district. I encourage the board to consider striking the 4th bullet on item 4 in option 1, coaching advisory letter of appointment, replacing the phrase "is canceled within 30 days of the start of the season" with "is canceled prior to the start of the season" in the first bullet point under item 4. Making these changes would give coaches and advisors 25% of their wages if the season were to be canceled, and acknowledge that coaching and advisors are working all year as leaders of their programs and ambassadors to the district. No matter what the board elects to do, I will still do everything I can to create a program that is worthy of the Spartans that lace up their shoes or watch from the stands. But I hope you consider amending the letter of appointment and compensation structure to acknowledge that there are elements and responsibilities of a coach and advisor that go beyond the classroom or season. Thank you for the time. Have a great evening. And Tasia, I would like the record to show that I love my wife and children.
Corey,
Yeah.
will you repeat your suggestions for the verbiage, please?
Yeah. So I encourage the board to consider striking the 4th bullet point under item 4 in option 1, coaching advisory letter of appointment.
Okay, wait.
And replacing the phrase "is canceled within 30 days of the start of the season" with "is canceled prior to the start of the season" in the first bullet point under item 4.
So instead of saying-
I think I got you.
Yep,
Instead of within 30 days, you just do it all. And then we get rid of the last one.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
See you later, Deja.
Yep, see ya.
The other request we had was from a parent in Somerset Township as well, Matt Foucault. And his letter reads, "To the Somerset School Board, I am a resident with 3 students enrolled in the district, a soon-to-be 5th grader, soon-to-be 3rd grader, and soon-to-be kindergartner. We have lived in the district for all of our kids' school years and have grown to trust the decisions set forth by the board and district employees. We supported the latest referendum and know that another is to come for an addition to the high school with an auditorium. The latest questions regarding school attendance in the fall is worrisome to me. I am a frontline employee and have been out of the house since the closure of school. I saw that we thought was a spread of COVID-19 and soon came to realize that we saw very limited community transmission. Our kids have suffered. Their well-being has suffered, their emotions have suffered, and their education has suffered. Our kids need to be back in-person education without masks and without separation at lunch. Everything we have set them up to be is at risk. If one thing has come out of this situation, it is the need to ensure cleanliness and keeping our kids home when sick. These are the facts we must be pushing forward and ensuring. Do what is right and plan to reopen our schools for fall session completely. No restrictions, no changes. Remember, your positions are elected and district employees are hired. If you don't do it, we, the community, will ensure we elect a body that will. Respectfully, Matt Foucault, 2108 54th Street, Somerset." So I believe we are now due to go on to item number 4, advanced operations. Child care incentive pay grant is Emily.
I'm gonna call Leslie, yep.
Leslie
Leslie.
going to be talking with us?
Yep, let me get her on. Just kidding.
We had problems with cell phones today.
Oh.
Yes, you know what, I was trying to call her several times a day and I couldn't get through on a cell phone.
Wait, does she live in the township maybe? Cause I know somebody who they still couldn't. get
T-Mobile's
her.
down.
Oh, T-Mobile's down.
I have
So
to,
if she's T-Mobile.
that's what I have.
I don't know, but I couldn't get a hold of her.
I mean,
But we
what-
read it.
Is there anything we have to
Okay.
do with this other than approve it?
Right, that's
Yeah.
it, basically, it comes in 2 pieces, the grant was around $16,000 and
God bless her.
Awesome.
I know,
Awesome.
she's
So
amazing.
awesome.
Well,
Yeah,
She has really come.
that is
through.
awesome.
can I just make a motion to approve for A1?
Second,
I'd like to hear from her, but.
Any discussion?
I would just like to add that I'm super impressed that she took the initiative to apply for it, and we're really lucky to have her in charge of Spartan Kids Club, so I wanted to say thank you very much for that.
Yes.
And my understanding from talking with her is that the first part, the 16,000, will pretty much reimburse the district for the cost of those 2 or 3 weeks when we weren't charging for first line people. And then the second part of it is hazard pay, basically.
Mhm.
That will go directly
to
to
the employees.
the
Yeah.
employees.
Yep.
So, wonderful job, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And there may be more to go after in that area too.
Well,
she'll-
yeah,
She has
put the
2
time
more
on
to
it.
Yeah, she'll
apply
stay on
for.
top of that.
Part B, then coach advisor letter of appointment. Would anybody care to make a motion?
Well, I'll move approval of the language, to get it on the floor, as presented.
Is there a second?
I wanna just talk more about what Corey talked about, is
I
that.
need a
I'll-
second first.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'll second.
Thank
So
you.
Patty Jo will second.
learning these
Rules of
things in the
order.
process.
Okay, so now discussion, go ahead, Roxanne.
He kinda spoke fast, and you seemed to understand what he was saying, could you just repeat, could you just
So,
explain?
we took item 4 and went down to the 4th bullet.
Okay, so
we
you go
just
down to
removed
the
that.
number 4, the 4th
Yep.
bullet,
Yep, so that if the extracurricular is canceled more than 30 days, it doesn't resume, there shall be no payment. So we strike that language,
okay?
pull that out. And then if we just go to the first one and say, if the extracurricular activity is canceled, and just take the 30 days out,
So then there's no
and
payment.
there's no payment, so they would just be, they'd be reimbursed.
So regardless of whether the season occurs at all or not, the minimum payment would be 25%.
Yeah. And then the other items stay the same, so the 50 if they start the year, and then 100% if they're over 50%. So.
But
that's-
could we consider it just for like the head coaches and head advisors? Because I think they do a lot more,
Yeah,
and
correct, but also I would look at, there's a lot of assistant coaches who are doing stuff just as much. I mean, I don't wanna pick, because I could do the same thing, there's assistant coaches, I agree, who aren't doing that, but there are a lot who,
Well, some sports only have one assistant coach, not all
Right.
sports have all those assistant coaches. Some sports just
I
have
remember
one.
being an assistant, and I was at summer, at the school in the summer for any camp that was going on, or weightlifting, I mean, even though I was just an assistant, I was still there, so. granted,
Hockey, the assistant is
I
there
think
just.
Can-
Rick wants
can be.
to speak to it.
Can I,
25%.
can I have a second here?
Yep.
So I did, reach out and talk to Trent, because I feel like we're looking at only half the canvas here instead of, so we're looking at wages. But we also have the other expenses that goes with sports and other activities. Transportation officials, tournament costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I asked Trent for those numbers, and that came up to $50,000. Coaches come up to $75,000 wages?
The spring
For the
coaches
spring,
did.
Spring. So can we use roughly that same amount of math, or a little bit more? I should have asked you, but I didn't. But my thought process was, so some of these coaches are younger and they're hired here and they take these positions to help supplement, their wage. Coaches obviously have been here for a long time and are dependent on some of this. They can't get unemployment compensation if the season's canceled and we give them nothing. So would it be wrong to mimic a 2/3 pay, just like unemployment? So we would come up with like still a savings, but yet not impact them financially on that end. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, so 66% of their wage if the season's canceled. And obviously if it's not, we can go, full steam with their stipend. So it's kind of the math I was doing, to look at it maybe a little bit differently, but to also take into consideration, if that season's canceled, we're gonna save a significant amount of money on the expense outside of the wages as well.
I hear that and I see it, and I love athletics, and I was involved in all of the things, my kids are in athletics and all that stuff. But I have a feeling, I just feel that there are a lot of community members who don't have family that are in athletics and in activities that would look at this and be like, they're not working, why are we paying them? And beyond, I mean, I'm thinking, my grandpa, I'm thinking people who are seeing it and saying, we're just giving them money to not do anything, and I feel like it's fair circumstances. I mean, it's not good for anyone right now, and we're hoping the seasons are, I just need my kids to be running, but it's one of those things that I really want people to be compensated, but I don't know how we can keep supporting people getting paid when they're unable to do their job, no fault of their own, but they're not. And it's not a large amount of money either way. I don't know how we can continue, because that's the other side of it, and I'm seeing both sides. And when we talked about this last, was it the work session or in May? Because it needs to be in writing by July, correct? Because that's when they're signing it?
Well, that's our goal, is to
Yeah.
have it for July 1st.
I thought we had this set up for that, coming into it, that this would be where we're going. I didn't know we were coming up to change it again. I thought we had kind of done that.
Mark?
Maybe just a couple comments. Trent, what's the other MBC schools, or what are you hearing? As far as our superintendent's group, they haven't even approached this yet, as far as, it's one of the topics, but no one, I think we're kind of the first one that's hitting the road with this. Have you had anything from what's happening in fall with the other districts?
Everybody's still in a discussion basis.
Okay. And from what I've
I couldn't hear what he said.
what's that?
Everyone's in discussion.
Oh,
So
You'll see a wide
this is,
variety of what people do.
even like the last spring, it was all over the map what people were doing, the comment, or I think the proposal is 25%, and if that was just head coaches, I don't know what district did 25%, then they did 10% for the assistants, so something scaled back like that. I mean, those are options, so just to share that, but whatever we do here, we're probably gonna be the test case for, other districts.
so I made sure to include, when I did this language, I made sure to include, because when we spoke at the work session about this, and what people seem to be, the other board members seem to be supporting, was as it written out. So I wanted to make clear to people that when I was talking 30 days, that then there was no, there was zero if it was beyond 30 days. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was able to, process that. I'm not wedded to that. I'm not, I hear what Corey is saying. I mean, I'm still very concerned about all of the other needs we're gonna have this year. And, but I don't mind, I cannot get on board with 2/3 pay. I just can't. I think the rest of it is reasonable. I think it steps up depending on how much time. And I don't think we as a board would be doing a disservice to anybody by taking this kind of stepped up response. Because we don't know what's going to happen, and we're still saying, yep, if the season starts and you're only able to play one game and you're done, you at least get 50% of what you were otherwise going to look at in here. I don't think it's unreasonable. Anybody that you contract with in anything, just like we did with our food service and bus service, and I mean, I know this is different, it's employees, a lot of them are employees, not all of them, but a lot, and I don't think it's devaluing what they're doing, but we have to be careful, because we don't know what's going to happen this year with our finances, but we know they're probably gonna be hurting.
Did anybody want to add any more discussion?
I'd like to make an amendment to it, so,
Go ahead.
for sure.
You gonna move to amend?
Yeah, I think so, if we're gonna, I don't wanna put a vote on it. As it is, and I support coaches too, I've talked to a couple and other people, and yeah, I'd be all for 2/3, but I also, taxpayer wise, I'm fine with 25%, as Corey stated that, and I think they're okay with it too, at least they get something, I think the 25 is good, and hopefully we can get started in the season, and we don't even have to talk about this anymore, but I'd be good with what Corey stated, where we strike bullet 4, and then the coaches get 25% no matter what. So instead of the 30 days, it just, if, the season is canceled, they get 25%. And I think it's head coaches, assistant coaches, activities, people overseeing, because, and you know what, if we don't have a track season, or we don't have, if COVID pushed basketball, we're not doing basketball, well, as a board, we can say, no, we're not hiring that assistant coach, because we'll have an assistant coach opening for track or something, until we know the season's gonna happen. I mean, there's a lot of sports with assistants that we're getting, a couple weeks before the season, so.
Well, that's a good point.
We could also kind of be holding until, okay, the season's starting, so we didn't have that issue, I don't know.
You may want, along those lines, you may want to just consider it being, if it's somebody that's returning.
Yeah,
Smart.
returning
Really smart.
person, that makes sense.
So Bruce has made a motion to
But
amend.
now I don't know what the motion is, so.
So my motion would be to strike the 4th bullet point
Under 4.
under 4. And adjust the 1st bullet point under 4, to just say, if the extracurricular activity is canceled. And then,
The appointee shall be paid 25%.
the appointee shall be paid 25%, strike the rest in between. So strike from within 30 days through the,
For returning coaches?
All of 4 should then apply to returning coaches.
yeah,
If we strike that though, cause the second one already has, no date for 50%.
That's okay. It's
Okay.
50%
That's
of the
if
games
Okay.
or events. or-
Agreed, thanks.
Are you willing to second that,
Oh, yeah, second.
that amended motion?
All right, so any further discussion on the amendment?
I just want to clarify the returning part. Yeah, and I think the board needs to make that clear too.
so that line,
Somebody would have to. So a new person coming in who agrees, a new assistant coach, who's coming in after the start of the season, but something happens, or, before the season begins, do they get 0?
I think so.
well, if the season starts, they would get their 50%. But if, like Mr. Potter would be a good example, he's on the agenda for tonight, he didn't coach girls golf last year. So if we don't have a girls golf season, we don't pay Mr. Potter, because he probably wasn't doing a bunch of golf stuff. Mr. Potter, I know you're probably looking at stuff to help coach these kids, 'cause he's not a very good golfer, but, he didn't coach last year, he probably hasn't put the whole year into it, he's a head coach, but if we're gonna go along those lines, where you haven't coached, I think that's what we go to the returning coaches.
I'm wondering if, to address this returning coach issue, if we can direct Trent to withhold letters of appointment until a certain time period before the season starts. And that way we don't have to worry about incorporating language into the letter of appointment.
First day of practice.
I don't know, what would you suggest?
Or we could approve this for returning, add the returning, and then separately approve other language for somebody not returning, that can be incorporated into their letters of appointment.
For new people.
Trent, do you have an opinion?
I'm sure you might process it right now.
Okay.
Us too.
I think you can address the returning coaches in that bullet point, but also address new hires, something along those lines. You can address it within that first bullet, because the second, third would apply to anybody that's started their season. So they would be on board, they'd be working with our kids, they'd be engaged, so on and so forth.
Couldn't we just change the fourth bullet point to new coaches within their first season? If canceled within 30 days would not receive compensation.
Oh, that's a good suggestion, Patty Jo.
There
I
were-
like that.
Boom.
Be ramping up as we get
Canceled.
closer.
Because I'm
More than
assuming they
30
would do work within the 30 days of their
Right.
season, so then it still compensates them for the work they do within that 30 days, but if it's canceled next
Oh.
week,
Over 30 days. and
Yeah.
Okay.
so I
So-
amend his amendment.
So, no, so you'll wanna say on bullet point 4, for new
New
coaches / advisors.
So bullet point 4 then does not apply to,
Correct.
Coming back.
Could that first bullet point say, for returning coaches,
Yes.
for
If the
returning coaches,
extracurricular activities.
if the extracurricular activity is canceled? So you can just add that preface there.
Yes.
All right, so Tasia, are you clear on just exactly what the amended motion is?
Probably as clear as I can be.
Would you like to read it to us?
Let me finish typing first.
Okay.
The overtake list.
No, this is good.
1800s.
Too short. Shut.
Okay. Bruce moved to amend the motion to approve the 2021 coach advisor letter of appointment to strike bullet point 4 from item 4 and strike the within 30 days language from bullet point 1. Second by Patty Jo. Thermos would like to clarify that this applies to returning coaches only. Forsberg suggested bullet point 4 not be removed, but language be added to reflect only applying to new coaches, and add new coaches language, add returning coaches language to bullet point 1.
Is that acceptable to everybody?
Well, that wasn't a motion.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was just a recommendation, so if we said yes, we agree with that.
So Bruce, would you like your motion to be
Yes.
the
What page it is?
first bullet point will be prefaced with the words, for all returning coaches / advisors, da-da-da-da-da-da, striking within 30 days
Yep.
of the start of the activity season.
Prior to.
And bullet point 4 will have added to it for all new hires,
Appointees.
for all new appointees, if the extracurricular activity, da-da-da-da-da.
It's canceled more than 30 days before the start of the season. Any time in the course of the season, which shall not receive any payment under terms of the letter. We're gonna have to add if less than 30 days, that we paid 25% to that last one, because they're your coach. Otherwise, we don't have that language, because the first one just says for all returning coaches.
Well, if the start of the activity starts,
I would think that the fourth bullet point, if we put the new people in that, the first one would be the non-new
And that-
people. It would
Okay, so they won't be
encompass
new
it.
anymore.
So we won't have to put returning in the first bullet, just put new in the bottom
I'm
bullet.
fine with that, I just wanna make sure everyone here is good with it.
Okay, so Bruce's amendment is that bullet point 1 stays as is, except we strike the words within 30 days of the start of the activity season.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
And bullet point 4,
We gotta add the new coaches or and existing.
and bullet point 4 states for all new appointees, if the extracurricular activity, and then everything else stays the same.
Yes.
So that is Bruce's amendment to the original motion.
I'll second.
So, can I just clarify, are we adding returning coach language to bullet point 1?
Yes.
No,
No.
No.
We said take that out.
No.
no.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's what I said.
So Bruce's amendment, and then Patty Jo had seconded it.
Oh, okay.
So Patty Jo, you're seconding that?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Boom.
Thank you so much, I know that was hard.
No.
Well, thank you
Alright.
to Cory for the suggestion, because
Yeah.
that's how we learn. It's great.
Item C, payment of old invoices, any motion for that?
I'll move.
Motion by Katie, second by Patty Jo. Any discussion? The only thing that I would like to be on the record, because it's not, explained very well in the invoices. Bruce, would you mind, running through that conversation that we had, before the meeting started about the 4th invoice with the furniture? What
Oh, I
all
did
is
notice that.
included in that? That it's more than just tables and chairs?
Yeah, so that should include, so the FF&E is also like the shop equipment, technology equipment. It's not just, yeah, like she said, tables and chairs. It's just also all there. I don't know, Shannon's here, she's probably know more of the stuff on the list, but it is the equipment that we have for the shop, which is a large cost.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D, the commitment of the fund balance. We went over this at the work session as well. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to adopt the resolution to approve the commitment of the fund balances. Is that what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Dave, is there anything you'd like to add to this item?
I jumped the gun a little. This is the fund balance memo?
Right,
Yeah. No, it's same as we discussed at the work session.
got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The preliminary report then for the budget.
Make a motion.
So the preliminary budget for 2021, as we discussed at the work session, this is a step in the process, a snapshot in time. I called it the status quo budget. That's what it is. Right now, there's no wage increases for any staff. There is the health insurance renewal of 7%, that's included. There's some staff attrition. The open enrollment estimate for the September count now is more favorable at the moment than we had for this year. So slightly less expenditure, slightly more revenue anticipated, that's good. On the revenue side, apart from the open enrollment I just mentioned, the revenue limit, we're getting a range of recommendations, but there's a lot unknown. Currently in the state biennial budget, we are to expect an increase per member, per student FTE in the revenue limit calculation of $179 per FTE. We've been told to expect some level of austerity unless the feds really provide a lot of revenue for the state to make up the revenue that the state lost and is losing. So the recommendation is run a budget with 0 per member increase, we're in a budget with -50 per member, so a decrease.
Negative what, Dave?
50, -50 per member. And not to get into the weeds too much, but part of that also then depends on, within the formula itself, do they still have these exemptions where if you have declining enrollment for that year, you're still made whole. You don't lose it right away. Well, if that still exists, then we're very similar, whether it's 0 or -50. But if that goes away, then that's a big decrease. So for this budget, I'm using a 0 per member increase. So it's, again, staying the same. What if the revenue was the same? The calculation was the same, rather. Because the revenue then, for our Fund 10 levy, decreases by 41,000 versus increasing by 173,000 if that increase were to stay. And that in itself is not as big of a decrease as we would otherwise expect, but we have Fund 38, non-referendum debt, that's ending. We made our last payment this year. That comes out of the revenue limit. So since we don't have to make that payment next year, that is money that just goes to the general fund. So that softens the blow a little bit. That's good timing for us. And that was, otherwise we paid 111,000 is what that amount was. So all of these things combined, you can see it's practically balanced. Right now it's a slight deficit, but it's at the same time, the information isn't solid yet. There is a lot that could change, and not just change, but have a very big effect on what our budget looks like. For the revenue limit itself, again, as has been our practice, I use the same student FTE for next year as we've been using. We don't know yet what summer school would look like, but that could cause a big decrease in itself to our FTE, relatively speaking. But again, with how the formula works with these one-year exemptions, if you have declining enrollment, depending what they do to the per member, if we're decreasing, that could actually help us. It's the calculation in the short term for next year. In the long term, declining student FTE is bad. That decreases revenue over time. But depending how they play with the formula, it could magnify the effect or help us next year. And again, we need to know more. We need to get that information before we can really feel good about what do we plan to do, how do we plan to allocate our resources next year. So again, the unknowns, the state budget, will there be austerity, to what level? We talked about the revenue limit, per member increase or possibly decrease. There's also special ed reimbursement rate for special ed aid that we get that essentially affects how much Fund 10 has to make up into Fund 27 each year, because Fund 27, Special Ed Fund, operates at a deficit. Again, within the state biennial budget, it was a plan to increase that from 26% reimbursement to 30% for next year. The recommendation is to say, but don't expect that increase now. If we were to get it, that'd be about $100,000 less that we would plan to transfer to Fund 27 at the end of next year. So again, that's another factor, depending what happens. Best case, if we were to get that, that's more money in general fund to be allocated to uses that we see fit. So what's happening with state budget? What's happening? Will there be austerity? To what level? What new costs will we have in the future? Is transportation going to look very much different? What are we going to do with cleaning? Are we going to increase the number of custodians that we have on a day-to-day basis? Talked today, I think, a little bit about, do we want smaller classes, more teachers? All of these things are part of the discussion. All these things, again, then tie into this, how we allocate our resources. So all that being said, that's what these numbers represent. It's a step in the process. This year, there's a lot more unknown at this point in time than there typically is, but it's still the same process as we usually do, and we just approve our Fund 10 expenditure budget as built so far, knowing that we will continue to adjust it. The next big adjustment, unless we add something in the meantime, is the September budget hearing. We don't finalize the budget until the end of October. So all that being said, questions?
So are you saying that we may have to wait until September before we look at our wages for our employees?
I would recommend waiting until we know more to add more expenditure to the budget. But at the same time, we will know more about what happened this year. You know, by then, we will know how much our fund balance is increasing. So even if we are going to say we're going to, by continuing the compensation, we will spend at a deficit, that may be your choice based on how this year went. But yeah, I would recommend waiting until we know more to make decisions about increasing expenditure.
So what I'm asking is, do you have any idea at all how long we might have to wait?
No, so the big question for me is, will there be a stimulus at a federal level for states? You know, federal government can operate a deficit, Wisconsin cannot.
Right.
So our revenues are way down. Where are they going to take that from if they don't get revenue from the federal government? And education is a big chunk of the state budget. So that's the concern. And I'm sorry, I don't have a timeline on that.
We're all asking the same questions.
Yes. No answers. Way to suck the fun out of the room, though.
There you go, Dave. Thank you.
So this is an action item where you would approve as presented.
I'll make the motion to accept the 2021 preliminary budget as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Consent agenda.
Yes, and that.
Oh, I'm sorry, F, District Administrator Evaluation Format.
I like it, thank you.
I
Seems
So let's check with Lauren.
simple, straightforward, I like the goals at the end, so
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's not an arduous task.
It shouldn't be.
Right.
So, and I had a discussion with Mark, before the meeting started, and he is good with everything. So, my suggestion is that,
Wait, did you look at the descriptions of the definitions of the 1, 2?
Did you just add those later on, or?
no, they were added
Were they?
over the weekend.
I'll go back. I thought I read everything that was on there.
We'll
Double
put that
check
on peer
those.
review, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it is what it is. It's like, I get reviewed every day.
Let us know if you have a problem with it, I think. Yeah.
So what I was hoping is that, because we have a special session scheduled for next Monday, right now, these documents are to everyone as a Microsoft Word document. So you could save it to your own drive and fill it in. So Mark, I was thinking it would be helpful if you would fill in the goals that we talked about last year
Mhm.
that you were working on for 1920. So if you could fill in what your goals were, that portion of it, and then email it back out to all of us this week, then each of us could fill in the document and bring it back and have it ready for our meeting on Monday. Does that seem reasonable?
Which meeting on Monday?
We have a special session on Monday, the 22nd.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this and IT, and Trevor's gonna come.
When do you think you're gonna have that done? Okay.
Well, I'll start working on it tomorrow. I've got everything, I've got it in a different format, it's just.
I still wanna be doing it Sunday evening, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
I'll just
well,
be honest.
I'll just start
I-
working away on it.
I concur.
You know what, this, well, I'm gonna have to go back through the goals I had for this year and see how I
Cut and
can
paste.
adjust them, because we're not gonna have a school report card next year, or from this year.
Right.
So, so I'm gonna have to tweak some things, so I'll have to get my head around that one. That was one of the questions I was gonna ask, how soon we wanted to do this.
Wait, is this to set the goals or is this
No,
the
this is for
evaluation?
evaluation for last year, and
So if
then
we want to,
We
you
mostly got done.
you want to use this for last year's evaluation? That's,
for the
That format was
1920.
so,
it is.
And
So
then we're
just let me
going
see how you can tweak these goals to make sense, because the targets I had, we're not gonna have any data on some of those. And things like strategic plan was extended to next year, so there's several things that really don't mean anything right now. So just let me go through them and we'll talk, I'll let
Okay,
you know where we're at.
so I'll be in contact via email, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay,
But the other two pieces, we have Trevor coming in, we have the IT, those two for sure.
Keep us posted.
consent
So you'll
agenda.
send out a word, an updated word, Lori?
Consent agenda. I move to approve 5A through C.
Sorry.
Bob, second.
Yep.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. General information, July meeting dates, the 6th and the 20th. Mark, anything else you want to add to general information?
No, we'll just, as soon as we start drilling on some of these things, we'll just keep updating you as they come. Whether they wait for a weekend report or not, we'll just.
Once around the table, Bruce, do you have anything?
Just thanks for everybody and all the extra effort they're doing, commencement activities and summer school startup. And I don't know what we're gonna do with these 400 people that I'm trying to get in here. But, I mean, the committee, is that something that's starting next week, or do we know? So we gotta figure that out. That was one of the things I know we wanted to discuss at the July work session. So. that's-
maybe ask, who was the guy that sent the letter? Ask him if he wants to be on the committee.
Yep, Yeah.
exactly, I have that written down
Or lives.
So
Is
right
your one
now,
around
I
the
think
yes.
We know where he
the
lives, you can go
3
to.
board members that we have who said they were interested in being on the committee were Catherine, Roxanne, and Patty Jo. And
403.
our last work session,
Must have been this
Mark,
weekend.
I think you said that you were going to have this meeting before our work session.
Yeah, well, I was.
But you weren't here.
I don't, I've got a, with this, survey information that we gotta digest all that to see how we're gonna proceed. You know, again, having a group, you know, that was a little shocker having 400, you know, I'm trying to process how are we gonna select what have you, because we really don't wanna get much over 30, 35 people. And just, I gotta figure out a selection process, because we want parents, we want teachers, we want a couple kids on there. And then we can, you know, maybe we have 10, 15 open seats and we can just draw names or do something to get some of those people in here.
You know, speaking about kids, I think there should be kids from all 3 buildings. It shouldn't just be high school. 4th graders have opinions, 3rd graders have opinions.
And they have a student council at the elementary school. Tony Defoe, or Tony Paulfus is the student council person at the elementary. I bet she has some student council people she could recommend contacting.
Well, this is gonna be on our admin team agenda to figure out how we're gonna do this, because again,
Okay.
we just got this data this morning, so.
And I believe Dawn Peer is the student council person at the middle school. Catherine? Bob?
I'm good.
I just have a question on the letter from the gentleman. How do we deal with that? Will one of us answer that? When we receive those emails, what's the protocol?
I responded to
Okay.
him. And I hadn't thought about responding anymore, right now, but I certainly can. He said he couldn't be at the meeting tonight, which is why he didn't phone in or, Google Meet us like Corey did. But I can certainly reach out to him and ask him if he's watched the meeting and if there's,
Or if he wants to be on the committee.
Yeah.
I would like to actually suggest that he be on the committee. I think he has a very strong opinion, and I think he's representing maybe a large group of people, maybe in a way,
And-
based on the results of the survey, so I think he'd be
and he has a child who will be at the middle school, one who will be at the elementary, two at the elementary.
so I think he should be definitely maybe one of those people that we invite.
So, Mark, are you
Include.
writing down his name?
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'll reach out to him again and I'll tell him about that and ask if he's watched the meeting.
Roxanne, typically when open forum, we don't respond, but the board chair or whatever can direct me to respond later, or the board chair will respond. So typically after someone speaks, it'll either be, okay, we got it, thank you,
Oh,
and then some direction will be given.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, put him on the committee if he wants to be a public comment. We haven't had one in how long, so.
Here you go.
More people have gotten on school boards because they've commented.
Roxanne, is there anything else?
No, that's it, thank you very much.
Patty Jo?
I want to apologize for that random invite I sent out that I did not know how. We were all sitting at your house and I accepted it because it popped up on my calendar, and then I magically sent an invite to the closed session meeting to the world. I don't know how it happened,
To the whole world or just the board?
just no,
The administrative
all
team,
admin
'cause-
team.
Oh.
Oh,
Like,
I was
because
getting
we were
questions,
talking about it,
why
we
do
were
I have to be at a
talking-
closed meeting, what's up?
Yeah.
Oh,
They
I didn't
said-
tell you.
And they said, did you get the meeting for Monday? I'm like, oh, look on my calendar, hit yes, and all of a sudden I'm getting like all these denials from all these people. I'm like, why are you denying me? And then I saw what it was. And so I did not mean to send that.
I just accepted it.
You did.
know?
Most
Okay,
people
I'll be
do.
there.
Well, you're forgiven.
So I'm not having a meeting next weekend myself, or next Monday, just so everyone knows. And then, I sent that email about the allies, the BIPOC allies, and I was hoping that you could share that with the admin team and get that out there.
Did you just send that to me?
I sent it to the board,
Board,
because
okay.
it was a board.
What did you say, what email?
An email about, for BIPOC allies, for, readings for Black, Indigenous, people of colors, for educators and board members to.
An excellent list of multiple resources.
I'll have to check, I thought I forwarded it on to the admin
Yep.
team, but.
That's all I listed. Thank you.
Katie?
I'm good, thank you.
My only question has to do with the status of the letter that the board directed.
Is that,
I cleaned it up and I'm working on gathering the contact
okay,
information.
all the items are embedded, are still
Letters
set
on-
to go.
I should have it going out tomorrow,
The letter's written, we're just waiting for addresses?
yes.
Excellent, thank you. Would you be able to send that to the board as well?
Yep, it is just in the format that you sent, the Google Doc, but I can,
I mean, with the extra data, the extra
yep, it's in
information.
there, they just edited the live Google Doc. So you have access to
Oh.
what they,
Oh, all right.
the one that I
didn't know.
shared to you on letterhead,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
but I can send it, if you have trouble accessing it, I can send it.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Well,
Bob? And second? Catherine? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank